No, that's stupid. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. A few things to get out of the way before I actually start. I don't know if you can see the sweat on the upper part of my lip, but it's so hot. I'm sweating, and so I have to have the AC up high because I just can't. I Hopefully it doesn't affect the sound too much, so there's that. Also, I've never worn my hair slicked back on this channel before, and it's giving Lily Rose Depp, I think. But anyways, we move. What else? First video of the new year, and I just want to wish everybody a happy new year. I am not one of those people who for some hates New Year's resolutions, because it's new year, new me, bitch. And what? And also, today is the 15th when I'm filming this, and hopefully it'll be the 18th when I post it. But I say that to say, even if you haven't started your New Year's resolution at the top of the year, there's still time. You can start whenever you want to, but there's still time. Okay, all right, that's all. To the video. So I've been in my gym era for the past, I want to say 6 months. I've been to the gym about minimum 3 times a week, but like 3 to 4 times a week, every week for the past 6 months. And yay me, consistency, right? So I was at the gym this morning, and this woman, like, it was an obvious mistake, but she mistook me for someone else and asked me how my kids were doing. And y'all, the look that I gave this lady, I had to fervently apologize, and this is how I know that I'm chronically online, because my immediate response to her after the face was, and I quote, "Teen pregnancy?" And then she asked me how old I was, and I said I was 26, and then she got even more confused, but that's not the point. It then dawned on me that I am the same age that my mom was when she had me, which I was surprised when I did the math, because for some reason I thought she was younger. But the thought of having kids at this particular point in my life makes me a bit ill. And it's not because I'm child free or I hate kids like the rest of you weirdos. It's just that, I'm not there yet. And because of the way that my mind works, and I randomly yelled out teen pregnancy to this lady in the middle of the gym, I started thinking about Teen Mom. I always find it a little bit interesting when viewing programming of past years with a modern lens, because people like to say that you can't judge what happened in the past by today's standards. And personally, I think that's a whole crock of bullshit. But even if I were to subscribe to that particular brand of logic, this show is insane by any standards. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. I want to take us back to the year 2007. Why 2007? Because if you're like me, during that time, you were sat at home and obsessed with this little show called Zoe 101 that aired on Nickelodeon. If you're on any part of the internet, I'm sure that you've probably heard of Zoe 101, and not even in relation to this topic, but via Alexis Nicola, I believe is her name, who has been pretty verbal and vocal about the mistreatment she experienced being a part of that cast, right? So I want to set the scene, okay? 2007, I'm 9 years old, and I'm in my living room. It's chill. The family's there. It's a little bit past 8 p.m. and we're doing what we do, right? We're watching E! News, baby. And I'm taking in my stories, and then all of a sudden, I hear the presenter go, "Jamie Lynn Spears, sister of Britney Spears and star of Nickelodeon Zoe 101, is pregnant. And baby, it's been a wrap for her ever since. She might as well have, offed somebody." And honestly, at this point, I genuinely believe that if she had done that, they would have been quicker to forgive. It also did not help that it was the height of Britney's blackout era. You Want a Piece of Me, and everybody hated Britney too. And then that just trickled down onto her sister. That show was pulled with a swiftness. They had to record a finale real quick. Parents no longer wanted their children to watch the show, as if their daughters would have become pregnant by osmosis. And the thing is, we can all say what we want to about the Jamie Lynn of today, but as a 16-year-old who was already in a vulnerable position, she did not deserve all of that. And I'm, of course, operating from a point of retrospect, but I think that was one of the first moments I vividly remember being like, okay, like, why are they being so mean to her? And maybe that was the beginning of my radicalization, but who knows? I bring up 2007 and Jamie Lynn specifically because that event would be one of the first spectacles of what I like to call the teen pregnancy media blitz of the mid to late 2000s. You can believe that if the show didn't already center teen pregnancy, then there was going to be a point at which one of the main characters gave birth or became pregnant. A lot of TV shows, and at the top of my mind, we had Juno, we had Glee, we had the Pregnancy Pact. I used to watch that movie on Lifetime all the time. We have Secret Life of the American Teenager, a show that I know Shailene Woodley wishes she had never done because it was really bad. And obviously, what we're here to discuss today, MTV 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom. Since its inception, reality TV has always been seen by the masses as, a low form of media, one of the lowest forms of media, lowbrow, if you will. And in an effort to shed that stigma in the process of creating 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom, MTV was really interested in presenting these shows as educational content, and partnered with, I have to read it because I don't have it, had to look that up. So it's the Kaiser Family Foundation's It's Your Sex Life campaign and the National Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy and Unplanned Pregnancy. Did it work like they thought it was going to? I don't have an answer for that, and hopefully I can come up with some semblance of something after I talk through this with y'all, because my sticking question that I've been thinking about since this morning is, can something commercial be both entertaining and educational without exploiting the people involved? Because at the end of the day, this is not PBS. You can be all about, we want to educate the audience, but this is a television station that depends on profit, and y'all are trying to tell me that this is all done with pure intention. Okay, very cutesy, very demure. And the thing is, I want to be clear, because I do think that something can be profitable and educational at the same time, but it heavily depends on the genre type. This isn't going to become a reality TV channel. Maybe it will, but I've been leaning more into the idea that reality TV as a whole is fundamentally exploitative, unless you are someone like the Kardashians, who exclusively produce and curate the way that they're seen by a mass audience. Now, the way that people choose to perceive the images that they've been given is something completely different, but they still own the representation, and that's not something that most cast members of a reality show can say. Even in terms of like the Housewives, they have some level of power, but it's not equivalent to, they don't produce themselves basically. Teen Mom is a spin-off of 16 and Pregnant, and the show was initially designed to educate young viewers about the perils of teen pregnancy. One of the things you quickly notice about the format of the show is that it's highly individualized, and maybe this is just me expecting too much of an MTV show in the year 2009, but the entire framework of the show centers around individual choice and personal responsibility. And while I think that can be a factor when it comes to teen pregnancy, we also can't pretend that people live in a bubble and aren't extremely affected by the environment that surrounds them. For example, Janelle and Andrew. Janelle is a teen mom on the show, or was a teen mom on the show. I don't know if she's still there. Janelle was 13 when that 20-year-old man started pursuing her, allegedly, right? And she was 16 when she got pregnant, and he was 23 when he impregnated her. But no word about that from MTV and the show. Ryan and Macy, I believe Macy was 15, Ryan was 20. Amber and Gary. Amber was 15, Gary was 19. Nothing to say about that in the show, right? And just to be clear, not all of these relationships have this weird age gap, but enough of them do, to the point where it's noticeable, especially on a show that takes a takes the gendered social expectations that we associate with successful parenting and then tries to wrap it up in the guise of educational content that's still spectacle. Also, by saying, hey, if you don't make these choices that these girls did, your lives won't be miserable like theirs, and they're with no mention of some of these girls obviously being groomed. But that's the basic gist of what I want to talk about today. I have some notes jotted down, so hopefully this doesn't dissolve into word soup and I'll have something somewhat articulate to post. But I'm just so like, when I just did a quick Google. I just had to do a quick Google and I saw that Janelle was, they say that she was young, which is why I say allegedly, because ain't nobody finna sue me. But what we do know for sure is that she was 16 when she got pregnant and Andrew was 23. Where are the police? Where are the police? And this is also my other issue. I'm like jumping all over the place, but this is also my other issue with MTV framing this show as, you know, personal responsibility, because there's a lot of scenes of people are like, depending, but there are a lot of scenes whereby these girls are having this conversation with the people in their lives, and it's like, yeah, like you decided to have unprotected sex, so you have to deal with the consequences. No, bitch, I was 16 and this man was 23 years old and nobody is saying anything. Nobody is saying anything. I was 13 and he was 20 allegedly, and nobody wanted to protect me in that instance. But when I get pregnant, everybody's surprised. Let's be serious. One of my main issues with 16 and Pregnant is the false narrative that you are subconsciously led to believe, right? If you are a reality TV aficionado, you know all about The Confessional. At least that's what they called it on BGC. The Confessional and the green screen are two different things. Some shows have both, while others have either or. Both of these methods are used to break the fourth wall, because you have this individual addressing the audience directly, and whenever that happens, every illusion that you try to paint sort of like it gets shattered. It interrupts the narrative. 16 and Pregnant understood this perfectly, and they said, we're not having any confessionals or green screens. I don't know if confessional is a rep. I'm used to confessional because it's a BGC term. But they basically said this will play out like an actual documentary. But what they didn't take into account, or maybe they did because they're that sinister that way, but they had already built the narrative that they wanted into the editing of this show. It's important to note that the reality shows that are really popping off on MTV during the 2009 era is, if I remember correctly, The Hills and Jersey Shore. Those are the two that I remember being really big. And those two are very highly stylized pieces of media. 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom by extension tried their best to produce a continuous narrative that wasn't caught up in how it looked per se. It was very much, here are these girls, here are their lives as it unfolds before you, and we're just here to present the harsh reality to an audience that needs to hear that teen pregnancy is bad, while also kind of like not enforcing, but like being subtle and trying to have this message of abstinence. But at the same time, we're going to give you like bumper stickers about birth control, but like what are we really talking about here, you know? I would say that if you pay close enough attention to these episodes, like regardless of their intention of probably trying to create a documentary style thing, these play out very much like episodes of a series of television. It's very, very structured. There was clearly an outline that had to be followed, because even through the lives and even though the lives and circumstances of all of these girls are different, you could basically supplant each of them into the other's roles and their lives, and it really wouldn't make that big of a difference, you know? Each hour-long episode of 16 and Pregnant followed a different teenage girl through the latter months of her pregnancy, the birth, and the first few months of the baby's life. And this is all meant to feel as organic as possible. We're supposed to think that the camera just followed these girls around, gathered a bunch of footage, and then edited it together to give you something that makes sense. Now, thing is, even for my little YouTube videos that I try to edit as little as possible because I despise editing, there's still a narrative that I'm trying to put forth, right? I'm trying to string a coherent story together as best I can. And so imagine the likes of MTV. Those editors have to take all that footage and have to make it into something that people want to watch. It has to have a clear beginning, middle, and end, and some sort of like payoff, right? There's some like promise of the premise has to be delivered. And when you watch it in that way, you realize, oh, this is a TV show. This is no more than a TV show. They want to make you feel as though this is real life, and it is, but at the end of the day, we all know that this is orchestrated in some way by the producers who produced the show. Lauren Dolgan, who worked in series development at MTV, initially pitched the 16 and Pregnant concept as a reality series that would use the experiences of teen parents to connect with teenagers in the viewing audience. They argued that a method like this, i.e. using teenagers to target teenagers in a documentary style production, would motivate them to practice abstinence or at the very least use birth control. And this is why I mentioned before, abstinence was on top, and then, okay, like, if you don't want to abstain, use birth control. And they basically achieved this by showing the audience how shitty it is to be a teen mom. However, and we'll get to this point later, they don't necessarily emphasize how shitty it is to be a teen dad, because men are shown at a very young age that they can opt out of fatherhood. But in my opinion, that was also kind of a scare tactic to these young girls, because it's like, no matter how much you think your boyfriend loves you, as soon as you get pregnant, he is gone. So think twice about that. Each episode had certain beats that it needed to hit in the allotted time. I believe the 16 and Pregnant episodes like ran over an hour, if I'm remembering it correctly. There's a narrated self-introduction that's a voiceover with footage of the girls doing a bunch of domestic tasks and some other activities, but it's mostly domestic tasks. The topic of contraception is always going to be brought up by a friend or a family member, because let's not forget, this is meant to be educational, and it's literally every episode. Like, were you guys not using protection? And there's just something about it where you can tell this entire scene was orchestrated by the producers. And even so, if that conversation would have happened, it would have happened months ago when you first found out that she was pregnant, and not now. But I digress. And this also has to do with the types of girls who were cast in the show. In the first season, all of them were white or white adjacent, which we'll come back to. Will we come back to it? Actually, no. Let's do it now. I'm in two minds about this, to be quite honest. Black people and people of color also become teen mothers, right? But this reminds me of the Euphoria conversation when everyone was like, there are no dark-skinned black girls on Euphoria. And then the counter argument to that was like, do you want to see dark-skinned black women do the kind of things that they do on Euphoria? Do you want to see them do drugs? And da-da-da-da-da-da. That conversation. And with this conversation, it's like, do you want to see young black girls be teen moms on MTV's Teen Mom? And I don't know what I think about this point, because like, I get it, but also this show is ignoring the race and class aspect completely, because most of these girls, although the conversations that they have around finances in the show it's valid. I don't want to invalidate it, but they're never actually talking about things like healthcare. You know, all of them give birth in hospitals. Nobody's talking about medical bills. everyone is like, yeah, diapers, formula, and that kind of stuff, which I guess is more relatable to the teen audience that they are trying to reach. But no one is actively discussing childcare, for example. No one is talking about medical bills. Nobody is talking about, well, I guess if you were to put a black woman, I'm pretty sure in the later seasons there was at least one black girl. I think, don't quote me. I stopped watching this show a long time ago. But we would probably have to discuss the black mother mortality rate. Am I saying that right? The mortality rate amongst black women when they're giving birth. We would probably have to discuss that. But I don't know if MTV has like the chops to have that conversation, to be quite frank. So with regards to black women being on this show, I don't have an opinion. I don't have a thought. I get people who say that, sure, representation, but like, is all representation good representation? Would you want to be represented through the eyes of MTV in this way? Like, what do you want? I don't know. I actually don't have an answer for this one. The young women that were profiled, by the way, and I can't remember their names now. I know Farrah was one, Macy was one, but I can't remember all of their names. But the young women sort of model a specific set of behaviors for the viewing audience. Each episode is structured with the narration of the girl whose episode it is. In a brief introductory segment, she introduces herself, describes her interests and all of her activities at school and her plans for the future and her relationship with her boyfriend. And then she then explains that these things are about to change because I'm pregnant. And that's like a formula for all of the episodes. But the main thing that I got from that at the time, although me being 11, I didn't have the vocabulary to articulate it, but one of my main issues with that whole introductory section is that in each narrative, it's only the girl's life that is about to change, and it's it's implied and it's stated that she's the one that has to make sacrifices because she has to be responsible for the baby. And most of the time, the teen fathers are present, as in they are present to be there in the episodes, but they're not actually active in the lives of the baby. There's no similar window into their lives. What were their lives before the baby? I used to do this in school. I used to be in track. I used to do all of these different activities, but now my life has changed because of there's none of that for the men, and there's none of that where they have to detail the things that they have to give up in order to be fathers. And once again, I don't even think MTV was thinking about it like this. I genuinely think that they were going along with the status quo because men aren't dads. So, and I don't even mean to say that cavalierly, but that's the reality of the situation. It's way easier, or sometimes even almost expected, for men to opt out or men to not do as much in the lives of their children. The show tries to tell the story of this young girl who is subject to all of these challenges as she basically transitions from a teen girl to a teen mom over the course of the episode. And this is where we say in Dutch, het klopt niet. It doesn't connect. It doesn't make sense. This audience of teen girls watching is supposed to be shown the consequences of teen pregnancy. But at the end of the day, they're all sort of like this success story. I mean, the show does reward these girls for becoming a mother in the traditional sense. And by that, I mean them subscribing to narratives that say, hey, if you do this, you're a good mother. But the thing is, none of this is real because teen mothers don't end up on the cover of magazines. Remember how I mentioned that on the show there was no breaking of the proverbial fourth wall. I was correct, because it doesn't happen in the show. It happens the moment that the camera stopped rolling, because the moments that the camera stopped rolling, you see Farrah and Macy on the cover of magazines. And I keep saying Farrah and Macy because those are the only two ones that I actually remember. But it's all just very, very weird, and I'm trying to rationalize it, because on one end, you're saying, hey, teen pregnancy is bad. Do not get pregnant. If you become pregnant as a teenager, here are all the things that are going to go wrong with your life. But at the same time, those girls are rewarded for being mothers. It's almost as if, yeah, you know what? If you become a teen mother, you can still overcome and you can still be a good mother, but there is no, and I keep going back to this, there is not that same emphasis placed on being a good father. The point for MTV was that young women see themselves in the program in front of them, right? It would make no sense for them to be preachy in that way. It's about being relatable, and that this could happen to you too, you know? You see, like, Farrah has the same family as you do, so does Macy. This could happen if you aren't careful. And 16 and Pregnant sort of invited the audience to compare their own lives with the ones that they see on screen, and then adjust their behavior to avoid the negative consequences of teen pregnancy. I can't remember what season it was, but I'm pretty sure it's Janelle's season, where her mom had asked her to consider the option of abortion and adoption. And then one of Janelle's friends were like, if you're responsible enough to have sex, you're responsible enough to carry a baby. And here's where we get to the part where, and mind you, Janelle is the girl that I was talking before, where her boyfriend was 23 years old at the time of her becoming a young mother, right? So, and this is what I think the show does very, very, very poorly, is in an effort to have this grandiose statement about individual choice and responsibility, they ignore what's actually going on here, because they try to frame this teenage girl's sexual activity as the fact that it's chosen, and the consequences of becoming a teen mother is the natural result of that, of having, if you have sex, you are going to be pregnant and you are going to become a teen mother, which feeds into the abstinence shtick that they were trying to do. There was a story of a young girl, her name was Valerie, I believe, and that's the only person I openly remember seeing where she said that her family was against abortion. So she was the youngest kid out of 11, and she was pregnant at 15. And then during the episode, she's like, yeah, I would like to go back to school, but we don't have any like childcare, daycare, and childcare is way too expensive for me to do that. And my family is against me having an abortion. So basically her choice in this was taken away, and MTV just doesn't acknowledge it, just lets it go. But you didn't have a choice in this situation. You are 15. You are pregnant at 15. Everybody failed you. Everybody. So my SD card all of a sudden just stopped working. It just stopped. It got full, and then I transferred the files from the because I only have one SD card, okay? Like, please. I transferred the files from the SD card onto my computer, and then I put back the SD card into the camera as you're supposed to do, and it just wouldn't read as if I just like removed the files. So then I Googled it, and Google is like, okay, just like reformat the SD card on your computer, and then I reformatted it. And then now the camera doesn't want to read the SD card. So like, you know what? I am not tech support. So we're just going to continue. I only have a few things left to say, to be quite frank. So hopefully, this is my computer webcam. So hopefully it's not too terrible. I think it looks fine. Also, like, hopefully the audio is okay, but I think it looks decent. I only plan to be here for 5 more minutes anyway. So yeah. But, I keep looking up because I want to look into my camera, but you're here, you're in front of me, you're in front of my webcam. As I was mentioning before, the decision to keep the baby is individual, right? It's based on each narrative, but the decision to keep the baby is based on personal responsibility, rather than what it should be based on, which should be the result of your socioeconomic status and the available support of social institutions or the inaccessibility of alternatives. MTV does this thing where in promoting the educational value of the series, they kept offering this same statistic that 3 in 10 teenage girls will become pregnant, but they make no connection between that high statistic and the rise of the abstinence only sex education in public schools, which was on the rise at the time, but instead try to continue to push this whole abstinence first. Basically, they didn't say it out loud, but that's what they were going for. There were also these PSAs about how the US has the highest rate of teen pregnancy and teen births in the entire developed world. And with regards to that, in terms of birth control, all of the onus was put onto these young girls. So they had this, it was the reunion, it's the reunion special, but I believe it's called Life After Labor, and it was hosted by Dr. Drew. I despise Dr. Drew. But basically, it was a wrap up, and then Amber explains that Gary, her boyfriend, the 19-year-old to her 15-year-old, he does not like to use condoms. And then Dr. Drew tells her that his pleasure cost you your childhood and your youth. I would have punched Dr. Drew in the fucking face because ain't no way, like, what are we talking about? Gary was right next to Amber during the entire thing, and like nobody said, "Hey Gary, like you guys, you're both responsible for this." But at the same time, that was the same message that MTV was pushing, because they don't think that he bears the same responsibility that have resulted in both of them being teen parents. No, it's all Amber's fault. There were a few adoption stories in there. So Caitlin and Tyler gave their baby up for adoption, and they were just like, they're not ready to raise a kid, and for some reason their parents disagreed with that. If you're a 16-year-old and you're pregnant, and okay, like no one's talking about abortion, but you tell your parents, okay, we're not, like, we don't want, I don't know why the parents were in such disagreement by that. And also they had, like, that was a situation whereby the socioeconomic status of Caitlin and Tyler came into play, because they could not, also their family situation, but they couldn't in good conscience keep that kid. One more thing that I want to add, there was also this surveillance of bodies that I don't think I'll have the time to go into how I want to go into it. But as you know, young women, they were obviously already not insecure, but more aware of their bodies. And the fact, like, this show just compounded onto that, and being pregnant also compounded onto it. People are watching them all the time, their bodies are changing during the show. You could see that a lot of them were uncomfortable even in front of medical staff, and in front of the cameras, the MTV cameras, of course, but even more so in front of the medical staff when it came time for them to give birth. And it was a whole fucking mess. And this brings me back to the question that I had at the beginning of the video. This wasn't even supposed to be this long, but here I am rambling. I don't know. It's not going to be this long. I'm going to try to cut this down to like 30 minutes at most. But can something be educational and profitable while not being exploitative? And off the basis of this show, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say that it's not possible. Maybe this will be like the theme for the channel this way, this year. I mean, or one of the themes, because I don't think these young girls receive the support that they should have from MTV. Um, I think that they were kind of just left to figure it out on their own. And that plays into the legacy of this show, I think. But yeah, that's it. That was a ramble for today. Sorry about like the whole and I'm not even I'm looking at myself, but like it's weird. Sorry for the whole like shift in setup. But yeah, that is the video for today. At least I didn't go a whole year without posting anything. I have a tentative sketch. Like it's so because the webcam is mirrored. So like yeah, I have a whole. I don't want to say what I want the schedule to be because then it's just gonna. Because last year at the beginning of the year, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna post at least once a month, and I never ended up posting once a month. I didn't. Maybe one day, we'll talk about that and where I was last year. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for watching the last video as well. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye. Ooh, I have like rabbit cheeks. It's cute. It's very, very cute. 17 gigs already? Girl, please.